Masquera saying Zimbabwe, welcome to our channel Zim Confessions and Deep Secrets. Kana kari kutanga kukuya panino channel. Please don't forget to subscribe. Kana juwagara subscriber. Don't forget to comment and share this video. Nasimere Zimbabwe takuigirai Nyaya YeSADC kupisa Nyaya the Southern African Development Community. Iyo irikuda kuhosta the SADC in Zimbabwe. Vanu vachema mazimbo vachema ni Nyaya YeSADC SADC is useless and SADC is a joke. Why was it ever formed? People are being abducted mu Zimbabwe. SADC katarisa and vanhu vari kusungwa SADC yakatarisa muri Zimbabwe zvakare ma elections akabirirwa mu Zimbabwe. SADC yacho yakatarisa so SADC is a toothless and useless organization. Zimbabwe taught mungonzwa audio one of my top allies anosonchamisa achitaura pamusoro penyaya yemamadzoza muri kufunga pamusoro penyaya iyi mu comment section. Ataura izvi mushure mekunge anga achiita during a debate yaitwa naSimba Chikanza pahosta ma allies aMnangagwa pamwe chete naChamisa dati mungonzwa zvataurwa mamadzoza muri kufunga pamusoro penyaya iyi mu comment section.
As we know that SADC itself is just a grouping of idiots, people who do not respect human rights, people who do not respect other countries' constitution, people who do not respect their own constitution. So SADC...
Yuda.
I'm talking with Mavaza. Allow me to talk.
I cannot allow you to insult the heads of states.
Allow me to talk. There is no head of state in SADC. Those are thugs.
Okay,
those are thugs. They are people. Let me tell you, those are thugs. They are not head of states. Because if they were head of states, they would have adhered to the report that their organ wrote, condemning Mnangagwa as an illegitimate president of that country. And for them to come and gather in Zimbabwe around an illegitimate person, that is tantamount to urinating on the face of SADC, making SADC a useless organ in Africa, in the world. And no one has to listen to SADC now. Because it's toothless. They cannot come and dine with an illegitimate president. They are watching now in Zambia, in DRC, wherever they are watching people being abducted because of SADC. Instead of us to lay a red carpet to welcome them, Mnangagwa is laying our blood for them to step on it. It's no longer a red carpet, it's red blood all over Zimbabwe for the sake of SADC. What does it bring to Zimbabwe? What are the benefits of SADC to Zimbabwe?
Right.
They have shown that, pardon?
I will tell you the benefits.
No. I'm well informed about SADC, Mr. Mavaza. I don't need anyone to tell me. I've never seen any benefit from SADC. Zimbabwe today is in this mess because of SADC.
No.
When they said, when they said, let's deploy soldiers in DRC, some countries refused because they knew their economies were weak to sustain a war. But we had idiots as leaders, people who decided to deploy soldiers. Let me talk. Let me talk.
No, but don't vomit. We need to.
Let me talk. We had idiots in the government who decided to deploy soldiers once they knew they don't have the resources to sustain a war. Zimbabwe is in this mess today because of that war, because of SADC. So I am saying that grouping is a club of idiots, a club of clowns, a club of people who have got no morals, a club of people who clap hands whilst Mnangagwa is butchering the citizens of a country on a daily basis, a cloud of clowns that watch Zimbabweans being stampeded on, being shot at without taking action to stop it. Okay. So if Zimbabweans want to demonstrate, it's in their constitution. They are allowed to do it by the constitution.
Okay,
And no one has got
can I
right
respond
to
to
stop Zimbabweans from demonstrating.
Yuda? It's my turn to respond to what you've said.
No. I
You are-
wanted to respond. I wanted to respond to you, and you said you want to finish.
Yeah, but
Allow me to finish.
now.
Allow me to finish. Allow me to finish.
How many minutes do you want?
Even 10.
No, Ahmed. You just
Yeah,
have to
allow me to finish.
1
Allow
minute
me to
I've got
finish.
and clarify what you are doing wrong.
I'm not doing anything wrong. What I'm saying here, I am saying exactly what every Zimbabwean is feeling back home.
No, that's
That
wrong.
the deployment,
How do you know
that
feeling
the deployment,
of
the
Zimbabweans
deployment of soldiers, the deployment of soldiers on the streets is totally nothing to do with the SADC.
Okay,
Because Zimbabwe did not know that SADC countries or SADC head of states are coming. They didn't know yesterday. They knew it since last year. We have never seen soldiers deployed since last year.
because the preparation.
Let me say, let me.
ndofunga mangozinzwira mega muri Zimbabwe hazvina kupera ipapo. One of my political analyst anonzi Tendai Ruben Bufana abuda achitaura iye achiti, why was SADC ever formed? What purpose does this regional group actually serve? I look back to the organization's genesis as the Southern African Development Coordination Conference, which was birthed from the Frontline States. The Frontline States was an alliance of countries in Southern Africa that played a crucial role in the region's political landscape during the latter half of the 20th century. The main purpose of the Frontline States was to coordinate efforts against apartheid and colonialism in Southern Africa. The alliance provided political, diplomatic, and material support to liberation movements fighting against colonial rule and apartheid, particularly in Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, then Rhodesia. The frontline states included Angola, Botswana, Mozambique, Tanzania, Zambia, and after its independence in 1980, Zimbabwe. The alliance was the basis of what was to be known as the SADC, established in 1 April 1980 in Lusaka, Zambia. In Lusaka, Zambia, following the Lusaka Declaration, which outlined its objectives and goals. The founding members were Angola, Botswana, Lesotho, Malawi, Swaziland, Tanzania, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. The primary aim of SADC was to coordinate development projects and reduce economic dependence on South Africa, which at the time was under apartheid rule. The member states wanted to create a framework for cooperation that would enhance economic growth and stability in the region. Nonetheless, in all these noble principles of enhancing economic development, the original ideas of freedom and independence suddenly somehow took a back seat. No longer was there all the colonial era talk and democracy and human rights. It was as if these values did not matter anymore. In 1992, SADC was transformed to SADC with the signing of the SADC Treaty in Namibia. The transformation aimed to broaden the focus of organization from coordination to deeper economic integration and cooperation. Again, in all this, the initial core values of the frontline states, that is freedom, human rights, democracy, were never given much consideration. These issues had been forgotten and put into dustbin. This did not mean by any stretch of imagination that suddenly, just because these Southern African nations had finally attained their political independence from their former colonial masters, democracy and human rights had become cornerstones of these countries. Far from it. In fact, barely 2 years into Zimbabwe's independence, the ZANU-PF regime was already massacring thousands of innocent, unarmed civilians in the Midlands and Matabeleland provinces. The then SADC never uttered a single word of condemnation. It was as if nothing of concern was taking place inside one of its member states. All the organization could make noise was the heinous apartheid system in South Africa at the time. It was as if on the white on black repression was reprehensible and unacceptable. However, black on black oppression and atrocities were quite normal and all right. In other words, the only freedom these former frontline states were fighting for was against white repression. Nonetheless, if the repression was at the hands of fellow black leaders, then there was nothing wrong at all. This depraved understanding of freedom, democracy, and human rights was to set a most disturbing precedent for decades to come. That is why even today, as hundreds of human rights defenders and opposition activists are being arrested, tortured, and detained in Zimbabwe, there is not a single word for condemnation from SADC. As a matter of fact, the organization is busy focusing on the upcoming 44th Ordinary SADC Head of States and Government Summit to be held right here in Zimbabwe on the 17th August 2024. This is the same country where innocent men and women who have not committed any crimes are facing unprecedented attacks at the hands of their own government. Even as reports of the savage beating, up to 78 opposition supporters were arrested as they gathered at a private residence for the Day of the African Child on 16th June 2024, made global headlines. SADC is not saying a word. It does not matter to SADC at all that there is a 1-year-old baby locked up with its months, as the group is denied its constitutional right to bail. For SADC, the fact that these 78 are being accused of unlawfully gathering a private residence where no permission is required in the first place is irrelevant. Just a few weeks ago, 4 activists, Namatai Kwekweza, Robson Chere, Vusumushi Moyo, and Samuel Gwenzi, were abducted off a plane and allegedly tortured before being imprisoned. This again means absolutely nothing to SADC, despite the fact that torture is illegal under international law, with the adaptation of the Geneva Convention in 1929 and the 3rd and 4th Geneva Convention in 1949. Waterboarding as a form of torture was allegedly used against Chere, as the 4 were held incommunicado at the Robert Gabriel Mugabe International Airport for hours. International law explicitly prohibits the torture and cruel treatment of civilians. Why the deafening silence by SADC? As far as the regional bloc is concerned, all is well in Zimbabwe. All that matters is that the SADC summit is held successfully as the head of state enjoy the extravagant comfort and luxuries rolled out by the President Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa regime. Who cares if millions of ordinary Zimbabweans are languishing in prison, with nearly half of the population actually characterized as living below the international poverty datum line? SADC does not give a hoot that there are no operational cancer machines in the whole country, with healthcare institutions lacking the most basic medications. It means nothing to SADC that as much as these regional leaders will be sleeping in 5-star hotels or villas and dining on the finest exquisite meals, millions of ordinary Zimbabweans are going without adequate food each day. Yet in all this, the ruling elite in Zimbabwe, with their families and friends, are looting billions and billions of dollars in our national resources without any remorse. Does it ever matter to SADC that nearly daily there are reports coming out of Zimbabwe of those in proximity to power securing dubious tenders where they siphon millions of dollars in public funds for virtually nothing in return? Such indifference by SADC is not at all surprising. Let us remember that this is the same SADC that totally ignored its own election observer mission report condemning Zimbabwe's August 2023 harmonized elections. They were recorded at falling short of regional principles and guidelines governing the democratic elections. Nonetheless, this meant zero to SADC. There is a huge reason why the regional body is useless and toothless bulldog. While SADC has significant influence in promoting regional cooperation and development, its effectiveness depends largely on the commitment and cooperation of its member states. The organization's decisions and initiatives are implemented through consensus and voluntary adherence by member governments. This voluntary adherence is why Zimbabwe can blatantly breach regional guidelines and principles governing democratic elections, and SADC does absolutely nothing. This is simply because this adherence is purely on a voluntary basis. No member state is compelled to adhere to these guidelines. In other words, SADC does not have any real teeth. This is deliberately done by its member states who did not want to be beaten by the same teeth they gave the organization. Additionally, that is why SADC does not have charters or conventions, but rather protocols and guidelines which are in the same mode as the United Nations or European Union, which are legally binding on all signatories. This means that it does not really have any rules to which every member state is bound with consequences in the event of violations, but rather is what contained as recommendations which each member state can or may not follow. So what Zimbabwe effectively violated in last year's elections were merely guidelines and not binding laws. These are simply recommendations on how SADC member states may hold their elections. No one is obliged to adhere to these guidelines. As such, there is really no action that SADC can take in the event of violations. This then inevitably raises some crucial questions. Is SADC still relevant, or has it become obsolete? Was it ever relevant in the first place? Do the people of Southern Africa need SADC? Why would anyone need an organization that does not represent their interests? For what reason would anyone need an organization that cannot stand up for them when they are being abused and violated by those in power? What purpose does SADC serve when it does not even have teeth to bite all those governments that oppress their citizens? There is no denying it. SADC is a big joke. Zobula Shawa na Tendai Mbufana, a social justice advocate, achitaura pamusoro pe SADC achiti SADC is just a big joke since haina chainoshanda inongoshanda nema recommendations haina mitemo iripo muri Zimbabwe. Tinaziva kuti munasei nyaya itudziro zvamuri kufunga pamusoro penyaya iyi mu comment section.